you serve and something wakes up inside of you that you didn't know was there. And you've got a why. And now that person, those people you're serving, they want to see you again, which develops this. There's a need for me, man. I mean, I do matter. And what I'm doing is worth something. And there's so many areas to serve in. And I don't care if you do it once a month, do it. Take a Saturday and serve. And so I think that's one of many answers to that question.
Well, welcome to the True Man Podcast. Now, I'm going to put a danger warning on the front of this conversation today because today's guest and I are both part of a Friday morning men's group called the Misfits. So shout out to the Friday morning gang. And just that name alone should tell you this interview could go sideways at any second. So I hope today's guest is absolutely on his best behavior. And speaking of that, let's just jump right in and introduce this guy because he's so amazing. Kit Cummings is the founder of the Power of Peace Project. He started in 2010 here in Atlanta, Georgia. Kit is an award-winning author, a teacher, a speaker, a violence prevention specialist, and Kit uses his wonderful skills and experience to resolve conflict in places I don't want to go into, like prisons and juvenile courts, schools, corporations, and faith-based communities. Kit, welcome to the True Man Podcast.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be here. The Friday Misfits.
Yeah.
We could also be called the Friday morning knuckleheads. We could go with, Misfit. It's real fun. It's a ragtag group of guys. We just kind of talk about stuff. We try to get spiritual.
That's right. It's important. It's important to have those types of groups. Now, speaking of groups, I would be remiss if I didn't mention one other group that you are a part of. And I think this is important because I was thinking about this as I was preparing for the podcast. So I don't know if you remember this, Kip, but we met actually shortly after I moved to Atlanta, Georgia at the West Cobb Business Association. You happened to be speaking that day and they had moved me. Somebody said, come sit up here at this table. And we were sitting right next to each other and you spoke. And I'm telling you, I'd never heard you speak before. I didn't know you. And I was like, whoa, there's something going on with this dude right here. This is some amazing stuff. And we connected and I went up to your office and you had such great advice. In fact, you told me, write a book. And at the point that we're talking right now, I've actually been in 3 collaboration books and I'm working on my own book. So there you go.
Nice.
I'm following your advice. And then the other thing that you talked about was, Mike, you need to check out North Cobb Rotary. So we're going to say a shout out to our North Cobb Rotary friends because it's because of you that I'm a part of that group. So I don't know if you remember that meeting here that we had a couple of years ago, but that's how we met.
That's cool. Because if you'd have challenged me and said, do you remember? I wouldn't have remembered. And now, they call me the absent-minded professor for real. My wife calls me that. But of course, yeah, I absolutely remember. I didn't remember I was the guy that got you into North Cobb Rotary.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Hey, for anybody that is about Rotary, what a beautiful service organization. We've got a family. I speak at Rotary Club a pretty good bit. Never seen one like North Cobb. It's family. It's fun. So, well, good. I'm glad I was able to do that.
Yeah. If you're ever in Kennesaw on a Thursday morning, look us up, come over to North Cobb Rotary. You might find Kit and I there sipping on a cup of coffee and having a nice breakfast. So now, Kit, your story is absolutely fantastic. And I want to talk about what you're doing with your nonprofit, the Power of Peace Project. But if it started there, we'd miss a nice chunk of the story about how you got there. So I don't know where the jumping off point for you is today, but how did we get to the point where this Power of Peace Project became such a thing for you? What's the backstory on how we got to this place today?
The short answer is pain and loss and failure. that's what I launched. How's that for a business plan?
Well, you know what though, that's real and that's raw, and that's where a lot of men find themselves, and they don't know how to get out of that. So how did tell your story a little bit?
Yeah, I will, and I'll definitely give you the 30,000 feet because I look forward to going wherever you want to go.
Sure.
Least likely guy to become a preacher. Grew up here in Georgia, Cobb County, Marietta, right where I sit off the square. Marietta is where I have my office space. We live about a long walk the other way. So this is my headquarters where I grew up. But I mean, I was a wild child, like big time. And I come by it honest. I mean, I say it, the men in my family line were thirsty. Okay. So we've got addiction running through our family line. We've got some mental health. And like you said, everybody does. I mean, everybody does. It's just a matter of how much and what flavor. So anyway, that provided for an interesting childhood. Tragically, I lost my dad when I was in college to that disease. And so it's very, very close to my heart. I'm in long-term recovery. And so anyway, that's kind of my story. I was a good athlete. And so I did pretty well. I mean, I was able to stay out of much trouble growing up. I was in the back of the squad car a handful of times, but it was all just crazy, being crazy, wild, whether it be just out there. I mean, I did a lot, but sports kind of kept me from getting in too much trouble. And then, the drinking caught up with me. And in the mid-20s, at 25, I met a guy that changed my life. And I had never studied the book. I'd never read the Bible, gone to church. I wasn't that guy at all. And I fell in love. I mean, one thing about me is I've only got one speed. And when I fall hard. And I'm talking about fall in love. You know what I'm saying? I've got not with my queen. I got one queen. Love her. I'm in love with my wife. So, but anyway, it's like all out. So when I fell in love with God, I just was like, okay, what do I want to do? I got to do this like on a big scale. And inside of a year, I was training for the full-time ministry. And so that would set me on a very important season of my life between 25 to 40. I mean, think about that wheelhouse for
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's where you're building. And I found my dream. I found my calling. When I was on my first stage, the audience came alive and I came alive. And I walked off that stage and I was like, I don't know what that was, but I want to do that again. And so I started banging away on my craft, and it turned out I was pretty good at it. I could lead churches. I could grow churches. And by the time I was in my mid-30s, I was in charge of thousands, in a pretty large network of churches. And I was traveling and I was speaking, and I had some success. And then mid-40s caught up with me and our midlife, I should say. And I just started getting thirsty again. The pressure of leading, at that level, and they put you on a pedestal. I mean, mad respect for anybody that's trying to do that job.
What did that feel like, Kit? I mean, I been around a lot of pastors, and it's a huge responsibility. But when you get to a larger church and people are screaming for more, what does it feel like to be responsible for that flock?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, shout out to North Star Church and Mike Lynch, who, is my pastor, and a great influence, a great friend, a brother in my life. But he's built for it. I mean, that dude was raised right. And he developed a heart for ministry as a youth, and then in college. It was his calling, and he always knew it. And really, I mean, good guy. We all got chinks in our armor, but I'm telling you, I ain't found many in that dude. But anyway, with me, it was a whole different experience. I was coming out of tumultuous. I mean, I was trying to get sober. I was trying to figure out, who am I? Going through the stuff with my dad and a lot of stuff that I went through growing up. There was a big part of me that needed validation. Okay, now this is kind of warning signs for people that want to be in the public spotlight. Everywhere you go, people are looking at you. Like, if you're at a restaurant, people are looking to see, is he drinking? Is he whatever? It's just like this fishbowl thing that's exhausting. But if I'm being just gut level honest, which of course I will, a lot of times I felt like a poser. I felt like the imposter syndrome, which I know is a big deal with men. I mean, that's a whole show.
Yeah.
But anyway, I wanted the next promotion. I was very ambitious, and I wanted the bigger church. When we had big conferences, I wanted that stage. And it really, my craving and desire, for, it wasn't just attention and spotlight. It was, I want to know that I'm worthy of this. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I want to know. And I had a congregation that was, I mean, they were so supportive, and I mean, it was everything that I ever wanted. But it developed an insecurity in me. And I feel like when I was a young man, when I fell in love with God and devoted my life to him, shoot, I believe, I believe in amazing grace. And I never doubted that he adopted me. He became his son in a new way, but that doesn't mean that I was healed.
Yeah.
Right out of the water. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like, ooh, I'm tip top. And so right when I went into leadership as a young man and they started giving me responsibility, now all of a sudden you got to be the expert on everything. People coming, help me with my marriage, help me with my kids, parenting. I'm going through a crisis, and it's like, I loved it and I was well trained and I always had men in my life, but it got real heavy. And then I started self-medicating. And for someone built like me, that's the perfect storm. So I had, suffice to say, I had a public fall from grace and went through a divorce. Now, here's the guy that's supposed to be teaching people about that.
Yeah.
I'm seeing my kids on the weekend. My drinking goes through the roof at this point because I'm just in so much pain. This is 20 years ago. And it was what it was. And so I found myself out there alone. 2004 was a dark year. I mean, I was out there, man. I wasn't hanging in, in cathedrals. I was hanging in clubs, and I got to a point where I didn't care. If somebody sees me, whatever. And I was driving drunk. I'm a serial drunk driver when I drink. I mean, which is, I say that that's sacred. And I say that, to the, there are those that are playing that game. Addiction is like that. I'll never do that. And then not yet. And then you do it. So anyway, I want to wrap up this first question. So I'm out there and I get sober in 2005 and start my journey back. But now I'm a preacher without a pulpit. It's like, man, what do you do when your dreams come true and then you squander them all? That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
And so I was looking for my purpose, got remarried, won the respect of my kids. I got my life together. But there was a huge hole, and I prayed, if you ever let me preach again, this was life-changing, I'll go to the ones that nobody wants to go to. I called them the harassed and helpless, and the least of these. Jesus called them the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the sick, the stranger, and the prisoner, the least of these. And I said, I'll go there. And I don't even know what possessed me to pray that, because within a couple of years, he took his time getting me ready, but then he sent a kid into my life that was in big trouble. And then I walked into my first prison to serve. The lights came on, and I went to 100 prisons and jails and detention centers over the next 10 years. That's a real number, over 100 facilities. And the incarcerated became my life.
What was the draw to that, Kit? Does that stem from like the troubles that you went through? Like, I want to be next to these guys because I know what they've gone through. Is that kind of where the draw was there?
It had to be a lot of that. Broken people are so beautiful. Yeah, Jesus.
Well, we're all broken there. So
right? But think about, Jesus was drawn to the least of these because he was them. He was poor. He was ridiculed. He was homeless. His mom was an unwed, teenage, pregnant mother. Scandalous. He got run out of the country when he was a toddler for his own life. He died a death row convict. It's like, these are his people. And then he said, however you treat them is how you treat me. Well, I took that serious. And so whether it be the death row inmate I was working with or cartels in Tijuana and everything in between, I put them on the pedestal. I'm like, I'm going to show them the ultimate respect. And what that did for me was it confirmed what he said. He says, when you love them, you love me, and I will be with them. So I'm like, well, then I'm going to be with them all the time. And so I became a friend to the homeless and to the prisoner and to the prostitute and to the ones that get looked down on. And it changed my life. It got me to a place. When I walk into a prison, I feel the power of God more than when I walk into the sanctuary. And no disrespect to churches, but it's just like,
So talk about that. You start down that rabbit hole, and all of a sudden becomes the birth of the Power of Peace project, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a crazy idea I had. Okay, I'm speaking this in 2010. I'm speaking in Philadelphia. I had started doing some prison work. I'm invited to be a keynote at a nonprofit conference. And I do my gig. It goes well. I'm in the back, pretty large audience. And then the host gets up. And this was in December of 2010. The following year would be the 25th anniversary of MLK Day. Now, I've been following Dr. King since I was, 25. And when I discovered him, and he's radically impacted my life and my work. So the host put Dr. King's face on the screen. He said, go back to your city and do something significant in honor of Dr. King's 25th anniversary of MLK Day. And which yesterday, this Monday, after we're going to celebrate his 95th birthday, believe it or not, he would have been 95. And so anyway, it just clicked. And I went, this was my idea. I was like, we could do a peace movement inside of this prison I'm going to every week called Hayes, which is the worst prison in the state of Georgia. It's just, I'm talking about gangster. And in honor of King, that's what we'll do. So it was so significant. I got the taxi driver to take me to the Rocky statue. I'm a big Rocky dude, man. And I got out and I put my hand in front of Rocky, and he's behind me with his hands up, and I was like, this is my day. And I claimed it, man. This is a very important day. I started writing down notes that were coming to me on the flight back to Atlanta. And, we launched it at that prison, and it was a crazy dream. And it developed into a program where we bring rival prison gangs together 40 days at a time. And that prison got so peaceful that year, it won Prison of the Year in the state of Georgia, went from worst to first. It got me on the map, and I would end up doing that program with rival cartels in Tijuana prison. It just became this thing. And now it's all about young people who are in trouble. So that's how I stumbled into it. Was it just an idea that was so electric? I chased it.
I think a lot of us, and maybe I'll just speak for me, we have this idea that prisons are filled with, thugs and well, those people, they don't belong in society. They should be put away for what they've done. And the reality is there's not a lot of rehabilitation going on in those places. There's not a lot of quote unquote peace going on in those places. It's a rough environment.
It is.
So how do you bring peace to another man's life when they're locked up searching for hope?
Yeah. It's, your show, the True Man show, it's like men. Just the way we're put together, what motivates us, what inspires us, what discourages us, what, scares us. It's like men are men. And so in these circumstances, you've got, 1,000 to 2,000 men crammed into a small space, and none of them want to be there. And there is a culture that develops. I call it the convict code. And it's the rules of the game in a dangerous place. And so what I did is, I'll work with a warden. You give me a prison in the United States, man, I can't wait. Let's do this. And if they will work with me and give me the 100 most influential men in that prison, okay, which is, let's say 1 out of 10, you give me the 10% that are really influencing this prison, and give them to me for 8 weeks. And we go through a curriculum I developed, and we study the great ones like King and Gandhi and Mandela, and Dalai Lama and Cesar Chavez, and the great iconic peacemakers from the 20th century. And we drill down and we talk to the men in them instead of, these are guys that don't do programs. I'm talking about tattoos on their face, Crips, Bloods, Gangster Disciples, MS-13. Just like in a place where it gets lively. And it appeals to them, speaking to them as a man. What kind of man are you? And they allow it. I get to say things to some dangerous dudes, and they respect it, and they allow it because it speaks to them. And then we go 40 days at a time, and we call those guys that are leading to lead in a new way. And it's crazy. Something happens, and we come back and we celebrate it. We bring in music and free world food. We used to do tours in a van with a hip hop crew. We roll in, we do 3 shows a day, one prison to another. And just, it was so much fun, but it's like a brotherhood. And somewhere along the way, they adopted me, and I became a made man. And because they know I love them. It's like
you're a misfit. You're a misfit.
A knucklehead. Johnny Cash fell in love with prisoners, and he started doing, Folsom Prison in San Quentin.
Yeah.
And he loved them so hard that they were convinced that he had done time. And he would tell them he never did. He got arrested. He had a serious drug problem, almost died. But they were like, nah, there's no way you can love us and know us like you do if you want one of us. That's what happened with me. And they started saying, man, he loves us. He fights for us. He tries to help us get a better life in this place. And they honor that. They respect that.
What do you think it is about what you're doing, Kit, that they allow you to talk into them in that way? I mean, is that something that probably most of these men, probably not unlike a lot of guys walking around on the street today, have missed in their life?
Yeah. People fear them and they don't respect them. And they definitely haven't got to a place where they love them. And I was coming, it was perfect storm, Mike. I was coming out of just hell for me, where I'd lost my voice and I'd lost my heart. And they gave me it's crazy, maximum security prisons, the tougher the better, gave me a safe space that I could be me and not be careful and share my pain and share my heartaches and share my failures with real men that know what pain and loss and failure is all about. And it was cathartic for me because I could unload all this shame that I was carrying, and they loved me for it. They weren't used to men coming in, treating them with respect and love and being honest with them and saying, I'm screwed up and here's how bad I messed it up. And they're like, I mean, they're like, whoa, a dude's coming in not trying to save us.
This is quite the analogy, I got to say, right? Because a lot of people walking around in a self-induced prison, and you're talking about going into a physical prison in order to get out of your self-induced prison.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's powerful stuff, man.
Well, and then think about it. I became their hero. They became mine. And so I couldn't go to the next one. And I expected that response. And then it became, I'm so playful and comfortable in these places that, I mean, I walked up day before yesterday. I work with these young knuckleheads in juvenile correctional facilities. And I walk up on a kid that I don't know well at all. And I developed this in the adult prisons is I walk up on a dude and just stand next to him, act like I don't see him. Or I'll come up and I'll bump him in the back and I'll just turn sideways and this dude will turn around like, who just did that? And I'll be sitting there like that and go, man, don't you do that to me. And I'm like, what you gonna do? He goes, man, I'll and so it's like I shock them with the way that I treat with them. It's playful, it's fun, and it's very engaging for them. And they can't wait for the next time. Jesus said, when I was in prison, you came to visit me. He didn't say you came to train me, disciple me, save me, change me. He said you came to visit with me. And that is the secret, is you long to be with them. And when you do, I'm telling you, poor people and locked up people are so much more fascinating than rich people. You give me a bunch of poor people to hang with, and I'll choose them any day over the rich and famous and successful because they're boring a lot of time. So
but they make good donors. We'll talk about that later.
Thank you for throwing that in there, brother.
I didn't want to leave that off. I was trying to help you out, brother.
Thank you, man.
You know what? You know what's interesting though? This is fascinating to me because I work in the men's community, and I feel like when I have these conversations with men, what they're looking for is love. They're looking for more intimacy. They're looking for more relationships. And you're talking about, you're using the same language. You're talking about people in prison. They're looking for the same thing the regular guy on the street is, aren't they?
Yep. And it's pretty simple. It's like, well, it's simple, but it's difficult. Okay. These guys are not running around singing hallelujah and holding hands, kumbaya. I mean, these are hard dudes and these are enemies. I'm teaching them what a real leader looks like. Show me true power. And this appeals to them because I'm like, tell me which is more powerful. A dude that's got the influence to send 3 soldiers to go and, get a guy. That's power, right? That's the only power they know on the inside. And I'm like, what about a guy that's got so much power he can tell everybody, lay it down, no violence. No, we're not going to have violence in this dorm. We're not going to have violence in this compound. And if you got 2 or 3 guys that are influential like that, and then they're all of a sudden like, I challenge them, show me true power. Violence is easy. Violence is lazy. Come on, man. 3 guys jumping on one, there's no honor in that. Show me real power, and then we'll talk. And it calls them to do something great. Now it's edgy, and I've had enemies in there. I mean, there's been threats. When there's a kite, they write on these little bitty piece of paper. It's the way they communicate through guards. They'll pass it, whatever. And when a kite goes out and it says, "Tell the white boy to watch his back," and you have a credible threat and you're walking into dorms where that's where they live. I mean, then you find out, how much do I really care about what I do? Like, am I really in, or is it first sign of danger or opposition that I'm out? Plan B, I can always go back to this. And this was wonderful because it gave me, I quit, bro. I quit the ministry. I gave up. I lost my heart. You talk about failing. When you commit your life to God, I walked away from a marriage. Okay, so I've got some major quitting things as men that hurts us. It hurts our self-esteem. It helps our self-respect. I didn't respect me anymore, man, because I had quit on the biggest things in life you can quit. Walking away from a marriage and your kids, walking away from the ministry and God. It's like I had a lot of damage in there, bro. And so I'm the wounded healer that's going in and saying, bro, I'm not trying to fix anybody. And I tell them, hey, I'm going to make a promise to you. I'm not coming in here trying to bring God to you. I'm coming here trying to find God in you. There's a difference. And when you're looking for God in front of somebody, they know. If you're searching for the good in them, one of my greatest gifts that he gave me, I can't take credit for it, is I can find beauty in the most seemingly ugly things. And the person, really, death row is probably you've got a brother that's done the worst thing, probably some mental illness.
Yeah.
They're waiting on a phone call. They never want to come. And when those brothers feel loved, and it's like, man, I'm looking for the good in you. The good begins to shine, at least with you. And then if you leave, it's like they might go back to being, knucklehead, but there's power in love. There really is. And when men love other men, I'm telling you, we know it because we're living in a world where men are trying to impress one another and win over one another. And, if I win, you lose. If I lose, you win. And it's comforting when a man shows up and he's authentic and he's willing to share his words because he ain't afraid of what you think. And maybe the other guy does the same.
Well, and I think it helps too. Our guys, we like to fix things, right? We fix cars, we fix, houses, we fix things.
We try to fix our wives.
We try to, I didn't want to go there, Kit, but you did. No, but we try to fix our families. We try to fix, and we use the term fix, and we try to fix our faith too sometimes. Mm-hmm. And there's danger in using that term fix. And I'm just a big believer we all have it inside of us. We're just looking for somebody like a Kit Cummings, to walk into a prison wall and go, dude, I'm not here to fix you. But I want you to know you got something inside of you. Now, if you want to investigate that, that's what I'm here for. And I think that means a lot. And I think that, as having come from the ministry, I think this is where a lot of churches get in trouble too. You just can't be shouting out to people. I mean, we all know we're sinners, right? And at least I always say, I know I'm a sinner. Just help me get to the point where you give me some instruction here. Yeah. Is there a manual? So I'm fascinated by the work you do. And I think for a lot of people, that there's so many similarities to what goes on in prisons and similarities to what goes on outside of prisons. It's those self-induced prisons that people put themselves in.
So true.
And so many of us have been lucky because we did a lot of stupid things, particularly when we were young, that we didn't end up in a place like that.
So true. That's and I carry that close to my heart because, I tell the young ones, I call it my kryptonite. You put alcohol in this brain and it changes. Now that makes me different than other men, probably including yourself. There's 1 out of 10 of us that we don't have a good off switch. And so when you put alcohol in his brain, I think differently immediately. And I want to go and do this, want to go and see this. And I'm willing to drive to get there. And so, I crash cars. I mean, I'm so blessed. And I see volunteers, and God bless them. Anybody that goes behind the wire, going in and try to help, I got mad respect. I don't care what it is you're trying to do, just the fact that you want to do that. But I know I should be there because, you hit a car and kill or hurt somebody badly, you're going to prison. You're going to a state prison. And if it's vehicular homicide, which it would have been for me, you're talking about a straight 15. Okay, so now you're not just doing a little time in the county jail. You're going into being a convict. And I say that with respect. And so, or death. I mean, I was going to die or I was going to kill somebody. And so I certainly know that I should be wearing white with blue stripe. And I'm not ashamed to say it. And those men appreciate that. It's not a free world volunteer saying, I'm just like you. I'm a sinner. I could be here. And they're looking out there going, no, you're not. You don't know me. You know what I'm saying? And so, and they're the ones that made me like this with all the ink. That tells my story.
Kit, tell everybody, what does it feel like to walk into a prison, spend time with a dude, and see that light come on, and see them transition to have a heart for Christ and want to be a leader in the peace movement?
There's nothing like it. And it's amazing how many guys get out and reach out to me because I've told them I am not hard to find. And one of my books, one of the first ones that I wrote, I would take it into prison. This was our curriculum for a while. And had my freaking cell phone number on the back. Okay, so I've got thousands, that's a real number, thousands of little books out there with brothers in prisons and all kind of crazy places that have my cell phone number. So when they get out, hey, bro, hitting you up, you told me I could help. And they want to join something. They want to be a part of something.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. But now that I've been working with young incarcerated and, my specialty has become gang certified in a number of areas. Youth gangs is my heart. Is nobody wants them. People are afraid of them, mad at them. Nobody believes they're redeemable. And when you see someone catch it, even if it's 1 out of 100, I don't care. This young man that I ran across at a place called Eastman Juvenile Correctional, God puts me in the toughest places first for some reason. And so that's the toughest juvenile, facility in the state. I'm talking about young men that are tough. You're 16, 17, 18-year-old young dudes that are from the streets and playing the game. And one of them, he was somebody. He came through the prison or the detention center down there. And I knew he was somebody because they didn't beat him up and they didn't take his stuff. He didn't have to earn his stripes. That meant that he had a reputation from the streets and from other facilities. And, there are a lot of dudes that know him before he got there. And I watched him work, man. This kid had wisdom and talent. And I began to pay special attention to him. And he became very powerful in my circles. We have about 12 kids at a time in circles. And he became my go-to guy. I'd say, Quez, what do you think? And he just would come with just knowledge and just wise. He's an old soul, 19 at the time. And so we're standing out in the yard one day and he's getting ready to go home. And I look over and I say, Quez, what are you trying to do, man? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, when you go home, what is it you're trying to do? And he said this. He said, I want to be you. And I'm like, no, you don't. Bro. And I'm like, say more, bro. What do you mean? And he's like, I want to get out and do what you do. And he used the term that I don't like. He said, I want to be a motivational speaker. And I said, bro, I am not a motivational. I'm a teacher, whatever. And I said, all right, you ever been a superhero? And he goes, what do you mean? I'm like, out there in the free world on the streets. He goes, absolutely. And I said, we're going to have to tap into that because a lot of dudes say what you're saying. So when you get out, you hit me up. I'm easy to find. He hit me up. And that dude for the last year and a half has become like a little brother, but almost like a son. It's crazy. I mean, he treats me like a boss. He's loyal. He keeps his word. He travels from Columbus whenever I need him. I've put him in front of the DJJ board, in front of schools, in front of cops, in front of courts, and I'm teaching him. And one day we had done 3 gigs in a day. We were at a school, 2 schools, and then he was on my podcast. And I was like, bro, what did we do today? And he said, we spoke. And I said, in a motivational way. And he goes, yeah. And I said, did you get paid today for speaking? And he said, yeah. And I said, what did you tell me in the yard that you wanted to do when you got out? He said, motivational speaker. And I said, what are you now? He goes, I'm a speaker. And I was like, the lights came on, and it's been hard, dude. I mean, he had enemies on the streets waiting on him, a price on his head. He's trying to pull away from the gang where he's a high ranking dude. I needed him so bad to show me that this is not in vain, that the toughest kids can change. And that meant a lot to me. I've got things that hang on my wall that death row inmates made for me. They became my friends. Yeah. And when you've had 3 friends executed on death row, it changes the way you see the death penalty. I mean, it's like, your question's a great one. It's everything when you see somebody get it.
Yeah.
It must have been how Jesus felt when he healed Legion, who was a dangerous man. It's like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's, wow. I've not had the chance to meet Quez yet, so if we need to make that happen, among other things. In fact, it's something I've been praying about for a long time. I've never done any type of prison ministry, never really felt called to do it, but man, if you're open to it, sometime when you're taking a trip down there, I'd love to come with you. I'm curious about the atmosphere and what goes on, and I'd love to join you sometime. So I'd like to make that offer.
Be careful. It'll change your life, bro.
Well,
be careful.
It's the way the last couple of years ago, what the heck, man?
You'll fall in love. I tell people, you go in one time, it'll be an experience you'll never forget, even if you choose not to ever go back. You got a story to tell, and you'll tell it a lot. These are characters, but some people that walk in get caught up in it, and they got to do it again. And I think that those that are called to the least of these ministry, it's powerful.
I'd be lying if I didn't say there's a curiosity, but at the same time, and I've already brought this up today, I see so many guys that put themselves in a self-induced prison.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to compare the two. There probably are some similarities one way or another. In fact, I'll ask you this. How can, the men that are listening to this podcast that are not in prison, that are trying to raise a family, trying to be the best man they can, how can they find peace in their lives, Kit?
I think it's service work. I think that men today, and this is very general, okay, it's very generalized. I mean, there's heroes out there, guys that are called, right?
Yep.
They have a purpose, and purpose is where we tap into our passion, if
Yep.
My opinion. And so, but today we got a lot of men that are tired, and whether they're alone or not, they're lonely. They want to be known. They're afraid. And a lot of times when we get afraid, we get angry.
Yep.
And we're seeing a lot of that. Men that are kind of sleepwalking through life, but they got everything they want. A lot of men, they got the wife and the house and the kids, and they got the job and little 401k and playing golf with their buddies on the weekends. And I mean, everything we said we wanted. And then you look around, you're middle-aged, and you say, what is this all about? I mean, what am I doing here? What am I building? And the illusion is, I don't have time to do that. I mean, service work is, I don't have time. I can't not do it. I mean, it keeps me, it's like, when I'm in a bad mood, I'm having one of those days, which I had one, boy, just recently, where I was just jacked up. And when your whole job is to love people and inspire people, and you're having one of those days where it's like, I don't even like people, it's like, I'm so blessed in that I don't get to stay in that space, because I will be in a facility that day, or I will be in a school that day, or I will be speaking at some sort of event that day. And you have to get out of yourself, and you've got to find this place to give and serve when you do not feel like it. And so for men that are doing, jobs, important jobs, whether it's selling real estate or doing financial services or insurance, some sort of sales, management, a trade, whatever it is, God bless anybody, how they're supporting their fam, but they lack purpose. You serve, and something wakes up inside of you that you didn't know was there. And you've got a why. And now that person, those people you're serving, they want to see you again, which develops this, there's a need for me, man. I mean, I do matter, and what I'm doing is worth something. And there's so many areas to serve in. And I don't care if you do it once a month, do it. Take a Saturday and serve. And so I think that's one of many answers to that question.
I think it's a good one. It says so much about you. That was your answer, you know? You got a big heart, Kit, man. We just love what you're doing. And I mean, I agree with you. And in fact, I don't get to serve as much. I have not over the last couple of years, trying to build a business in the way that I would like to. But there's something about helping others that I hate to say less fortunate, that don't have what I have or have come up on tough times. Heck, the other night we were, you and I both, we were up at the men's extension here in Marietta, Georgia. I mean, they're guys that can be hugely successful in life. They just hit a rough patch.
Never know. And I bet you, I don't even have to ask, but you went home full that night. You went home with a different perspective, probably more gratitude than you came in with, because you got to see somebody who's going through things. And understand this, man, every one of us has a beautiful soul. Every one of us have dreams. Every one of us have heartaches. Every one of us has been through, I mean, we're so much more similar and have more in common. That dude under the bridge, he has a fascinating story if you care enough to find out about it. A couple bucks might help him, a little bit that day, but a friendship where he feels like a real person again, because everybody sees him, the felon that gets out, and everybody's like, all right, gotta be careful with that one. People know when you're around them if you're afraid of them. Even if they don't know, they know. And it wakes up the predator. You know what I'm saying? Imagine if everywhere you went today, people were afraid of you and people were ashamed of you and people thought you were less. How that would hurt you as a man. And so, there's CEOs that went through addiction and mental illness and a horrible divorce and then burned all their bridges, and now they're on the street or they're in prison. There's pastors, there's doctors. Right now, this is scary, but there are jumbo jets in the air and pilots are under the influence, period, point blank. Judges that are jacked up. You got preachers that are involved in porn behind the scenes because they're addicted to it. It's like, we're just a mess, man. I mean, all of us need help. So who are we to look down on somebody who's in a different stage of life? You see what I'm saying?
Oh, 100%. That's why it's so important. That's why we have a Friday morning men's group. That's why it's so important to be in community and to serve each other. Mm-hmm. We're built for a community.
True.
It's just so important to take advantage of that, and the reality is, as you're well aware, we can't do it alone.
No.
We can try.
I tried.
And we do.
Ooh, I tried. It didn't work out well.
Yeah. So it's important that we find communities and people that we can engage with that will love us. And, like you were talking about with these prisoners, I mean, if you love on them, you'll get out of them what they're capable of. But not just many prisoners, a lot of people don't know what love is.
They don't. And they look up in that corner up there. Do you see that box up in the very corner?
If you're seeing this on video, he's got a box up in the corner. Yeah.
And but it's like, it's cool. It's a jewelry box. It's handmade. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it becomes alive when I tell you, where'd it come from? Okay, the journey that we've been on, we just see the outside, but all of us have been on quite a roller coaster. I don't care if you're a CPA that's not outgoing, that sits in a cubicle. There is a story there.
Yeah.
Just get close enough to see it. Well, it changes when I tell you that beautiful piece of work up there was made by a death row inmate in Alabama they call Psycho. How about that? And the first time I met him after I would meet him again and again, he came up to me, and I don't know if he knew me. I didn't know him. And happens to be a brother of less color like me. He's got some artwork on his face, bald, not a lot of teeth left. And he's a shifty fella. He's got a lot of energy. His name's Donald. And he came up to me and he's like, hey, preacher. And I was like, how you doing? I looked down on his little name. I'm like, what's up, Donald? And he goes, I want to talk to you. And I was like, yeah, that's why I'm here, bro. And he goes, I don't want to talk to you right here. I want to talk to you over there. And I'm like, okay. So I'm following, Psycho, the double murderer, over to a place of his choosing, away from the witnesses. And I think this is a good idea. Yeah. And so I'm following him, and he takes me up under these stairs, these dark stairs. And I'm back in there, and I look around to see if anybody can see me. And Donald's one of those dudes that gets too close to your space. He gets inside your space, which in America, what is about 3 or 4 feet, keep your space.
Yeah.
But he's right close, and he's all jacked up, and I can smell his breath. And he's got a question for me. I don't know what he wants. And first time I've been on the road that day in Alabama. And he goes, I got a question for you, preacher. And I was like, what's up? And he said, first of all, I want to tell you, I did what they say I did. And I got what's coming to me. I deserve it. I'm like, well, there's a great intro.
Yeah. Where's this going?
And he said, I just want to get right before they take me. And I'm like, whoa, isn't that what every one of us want? I mean, I want to get right before I'm done here and whatever comes next. And tears began to, he's not crying, but tears kind of come down over his teardrop tattoos. And he gets quiet, and his lip starts quivering. And I'm like, whoa, this is a sacred moment. And he said, so here's my question, preacher. I always get emotional. He said, can your God save a man like me? A man like me. You see what he sees about himself, how he feels about himself. He's like, can your God accept me? Because if he can accept me, well, I didn't learn the answer to this in seminary. You don't do this in a Bible study. Misfits aren't going to prepare us for this. This is a moment, and my answer matters. And it leapt out of me. I wasn't stuck there going, this is a theological question that's above my pay grade. It was like, no, it leapt out of me, and I said, yes. And Donald looked at me, and he said, how do you know? I'm talking about, this is the question, right? And I said, because he saved a drunken, fallen preacher like me. We hugged like longer than men usually do. And you said, every man wants love. Donald found it that day, and he was so desperate, he went and asked a stranger, and he made me that. And so Donald's still alive, and I can't go back and see him. Alabama won't let me right now. It ain't easy getting into these places, especially after COVID. They shut it down. But anyway, thank you for indulging me on telling that story. But it shows you we all want people in our lives. We all want to know, where do we stand? And I need somebody to love me and not fear me and hate me.
It's a beautiful, beautiful message, because, sometimes you see a wooden box and you can walk right on by it and miss a story like that. So that's beautiful, Kit. Kit, tell everybody, support my brother here, because he just has a beautiful ministry that he's doing. Tell everybody how they can find you and get a hold of you, and we'll put it in the show notes, of course.
Yeah, thank you so much. Nowadays it's easy to do a Google search. And so if nothing else, you can do that. I'm easy to find, on social media.
We know you're easy to find because you give your number out to prisoners. Come on now.
That's right, everybody. But wherever you do your social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, obviously a valuable source. I'm easy to find on those platforms. Also, I love your podcast. We have a podcast, so you can go to powerofpeacepodcast.com. And my nonprofit site is powerofpeaceproject.com. And that's all our work with youth, trying to shatter the school to prison pipeline. And then my personal site is kitcummings.com, real easy, where I do a lot of other stuff, with my speaking, my books, and my work with the city, county, and state. So thank you.
There you go. Kit, we finally got you on. I'm so thrilled to death that we were able to hear a little of your story today. Thank you for coming on the True Man podcast. You're making a difference in this world, brother, and it's awesome.
Thank you. And back at you. I love what you do. I'm glad we're friends. I'm glad we met that day. You're trying to help men. I'm trying to help men. So we're in this together. So
there you go.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Kit.
Yes, sir.